Welcome back to our headless site building journey on Wix. So far, you have learned how to set up your headless project and manage visitor tokens. In this episode, you will build an efficient and user-friendly blog page using the Wix CMS solution. The Content Management System, or CMS, is a central location to store and manage all of your data. This approach is ideal for articles, portfolios, recipes, services, all kinds of things. We're going to cover essential components such as your collection, creating articles, and rich content rendering. By the end of this tutorial, you'll have integrated a fully functional blog page into your site. For more details on the CMS, check the description for links to the documentation. To get started, we will use an existing NextJS repo. Grab the link from the description and fork the repo. Be sure to uncheck the Copy the Master Branch option. After forking the repo, copy the link to clone and open your terminal to run the git clone command. Next, you will check out the branch for static content. That is where we will start working. Run yarn install to install the dependencies. If you don't already have it handy, grab the client ID for your headless project from your headless dashboard. If you haven't set up a client ID yet, you will want to follow the link in the description to learn how to set up your headless project. You can also check out how to do this in video 1 of this series. Copy or modify the env template file to env.local and paste in your client ID from the dashboard here at Next Public Wix Client ID. Then run yarn dev to see that everything is working as expected. Notice the static content here in the blogs page. This is what we will replace. Next, we will integrate Wix CMS content. First, let's take a look at the blog component so you can see where we're going to be replacing this content. Open app blog page.tsx and look at the code for the blog card and blogs components. See that right now this is filled with hard-coded data. This is where we'll be working, but first we need to set up the CMS so that we have some data to pull into this component. In the Business Manager of your Wix Studio dashboard, you will click on CMS on the left-hand navigation. Here you will create your custom blog content collection. Click on Add Collection, Start from Scratch. Next, give your collection the name Farm to Table Recipes. A few terms you're going to want to know about working with the CMS before we get started. Data collection is the schema determining the structure of your data items to be stored, defining the fields each item should contain and the data type of each field. Think of it as similar to tables in any other database system that you may use. A data item is a single data entry in a collection, and these are all returned in a JSON format. Okay, let's start creating the schema. The first field you will notice is called title and is of type text. We are going to update the name of this field to be dish name. Create a few more fields to build out this collection. One for preparation instructions of type text, ingredients type image, and a slug field of type text. Next, we're going to add 2 items to our collection. If you want to use the same content item, there is a link to a complete version of this site in the description. We are going to grab farm to table ideas for each season and the caprese salad. Now, back in your IDE, let's install the Wix SDK and Wix Data modules. You can use yarn add at wix/SDK at wix/data. The next step is to import the SDK functions. We want to use the Wix Client SDK in order to fetch the data items. In the previous videos, we showed how to initialize the client, and to simplify the flow here, we're going to do it again. So import create client OAuth strategy from the Wix SDK, and import Wix Data SDK. You're going to initialize the client like this, and we're passing the valid client ID from our environment variables. After initializing the client, we are replacing the hard-coded static content with a query to the CMS collection you just created. This query will return all items from the collection with no filters. The default limit is 50, but you can set a limit if you need to. The image string will come back in a non-valid format, so we also need to import media from Wix SDK to allow us to use the images properly. Then we are going to change this line of code at the source to transform that string into a valid URL. Now run yarn dev and navigate to your blog page. Next, we also want to render blogs on the homepage. Open the Components folder, Homepage, Blog section, then open the file blogsection.tsx. Add your same imports from before and the Wix client code. This will all be the same here. In the blogs function, add the same query from the previous step. However, we're going to add a few things to it to filter this data down. Add a limit of 3 and ascending by created date. If you run yarn dev again, you should now see the 2 blog posts on your homepage. Navigate back to the Business Manager and the CMS collection that you created earlier. We are going to add content to the recipes. You could just use static content for your blog posts, but it really is a best practice for your site and SEO to use rich content. Rich content is enhanced text content that can include things like formatted text, link previews, images, and video. In your collection, add a new field called blog content with a type of rich content. To test this out, copy the blog content from the farm to table post in the fully finished site. To render this content, the headers, the dividers, the image, we're going to import a rich content component and the relevant plugins. The Wix SDK returns rich content as complex objects, and depending on your front-end technology, it can be kind of challenging to render these objects. If you are using React, you can use the Ricos Viewer package from Ricos.js to render rich content objects returned by the SDK. There's a link in the description with more information about working with rich content and Ricos. You can check that out in your own time. First, you need to install all the relevant dependencies for Ricos. You want to make sure that you use the same version for the Ricos Viewer and all the plugin packages. We recommend using version 9.16.12. Now we're going to convert the rich content from the CMS into a draft object that the Ricos Viewer component can then render as HTML using the toDraft converter. Some of the rich content elements, such as text, are included in the Ricos Viewer. Others, such as image, videos, anything like that, is handled as a plugin. In order to tell Ricos Viewer how to convert the object to HTML, we provide it with the plugins, as otherwise Ricos will ignore anything that it doesn't understand. So if you see that something's happening like that, you're likely missing a plugin. Okay, let's create this rich content component. In Components, create a new folder called Rich Content Viewer, and in it a file, richcontentviewer.tsx. Add the Use Client flag at the top of the file, import React, and then you're going to import the Ricos Viewer and all of the plugins that are needed. In this file, we aren't doing a whole lot, but we're returning the Rich Content Viewer here. Now we will use that component to render rich content. Head to blog slug page.tsx, add the imports for the Rich Content Viewer, the SDK data, and the client declaration again at the top of the file. In the blog function, go ahead and query your data item again. You will notice that this time we're feeding in the slug because we just want the one post. And finally, pass your blog content as a prop to the Rich Content Viewer component in the returned HTML. Run yarn dev, and now you can see the post page with all of your beautiful rich content. So let's recap. We've made significant strides in our headless site building journey by creating blog pages using the Data Query API and learning how to render rich content. Next, we will continue to dive into other parts of Wix Business Solutions by building an e-commerce store. Stay tuned.